game-changing discussions on the big ideas that shape our thinking. This is One2One.
He's an icon of African football, widely celebrated as mathematical for his precision, composure, and technical brilliance on the field. For more than 4 decades, he has combined athletic achievement with a powerful post-career presence as a journalist, broadcaster, mentor, and passionate advocate for youth development and nation building through sport. An Olympian, an inspirational leader of the legendary Green Eagles side that delivered Nigeria's first ever Cup of Nations title on home soil, he remains one of the most influential and respected voices in African football and global sport. He's my guest on the show today, Segun Odegbami. Welcome to One2One.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining us. A real pleasure. So let's dive straight in. You were born Patrick Olusegun Odegbami in Lagos. You lived much of your formative early years in Jos. You're an engineer by training. One of Africa's most celebrated footballing legends, there is no doubt. In this country, you've been awarded the honor of the Member of the Order of the Niger. You're widely celebrated as one of the Confederation of African Football's greatest footballing icons. But of course, your 1980 African Cup of Nations achievement alongside the greats, Chairman Chukwu, the late Mudashiru Lawal, Felix Olabi, Aloysius Atuegbu, and so on and so forth, remains a defining moment in Nigeria's national consciousness. So let me begin by asking, who is Segun Odegbami? Who is this indomitable legend of our time?
I'm very flattered. Thank you very much. Well, I can sit here now and start to tell you about some great person, that you say I have become. But I actually come from very humble background, without the faintest idea, that I was coming into this kind of world. I grew up in Jos with my father, who was a manager with the British Cotton Growing Association in Gombe. And he was just there, and I was playing my football on the streets because Jos was a very small town in those days, and we didn't have much to do as young kids. So football just came. It was not part of the plan. Right. The plan was, I'm from Abeokuta in Ogun State. And my father, if you are from that part of the country, you know that education, comes first. Of course. So that was it. We were all being trained to go to school as much as possible and so on. So that was the trajectory. The football just did not exist beyond me, just enjoying the game on the streets. So when I left Jos at 17, I went to Ibadan. No plan at all of ever being anything in football, to try to get into UI for my prelims. And then I got to Ibadan, saw a few friends who were at the Polytechnic then. It was not called Polytechnic at the time. And whilst waiting for my prelim admission, one of them, who was already a student in the Polytechnic, now introduced me to the Polytechnic idea. 2 years for your OND, opportunity to go to West Michigan University that had affiliation with the Polytechnic at that time, and so on and so forth. And then the opportunity to play football. I was playing, but not seriously, as if there was an ambition behind it. So I applied because I had a fantastic WAEC result. So I was admitted immediately. And then I found myself at the Polytechnic instead of in UI to do prelims. And first year, I was playing for the Polytechnic, clubs around town.
First year.
clubs around town came for friendly games, and then they saw me, and one of them invited me to their training session. That evening, I went with a few of my friends who were also in the team, and when we were leaving, they gave us some money for transport back to the Polytechnic. This was NTC Football Club. That was the first time anybody would give me money for playing at just my sport, something I just enjoyed playing. But it was an eye-opener and the start of something new in my life, to realize that you could actually make money from playing the game. So from that moment onwards, I started earning bits and pieces to train. When I played for them, they would pay a little money. So as a student of the Polytechnic, I started earning money, paying my fees. And, it was becoming exciting.
Yes.
And at the end of that year, that team we were playing for qualified for the FA Cup for the Western Nigeria, the whole of Western Nigeria.
This was in 1970.
1971.
What?
They qualified for the FA Cup, and I was part of those that made it happen. And we were young boys. I was a teenager. Suddenly, we were thrown into the limelight, representing the whole of the Western Nigeria. You understand what I'm talking about? This was ahead of clubs like Shooting Stars, WNDC, Water Cup, the V clubs. And there I was, a young boy amongst them, and I was scoring a few goals. Yeah, and suddenly I was projected in the newspapers, slow striker, and I started reading about myself in the newspapers. We went to Benin for the first time to play in the Challenge Cup the following year. We were beaten, but I had been beaten by the bug. So 1 year later, I completed my OND at the Polytechnic, and I was waiting for either my admission to West Michigan, which I got, or to do the HND in the same Polytechnic, because they were going to start the HND program. During that period, the National Sports Festival happened, the first National Sports Festival in 1973, and I played. I was invited because I was doing very well now in the local league in Ibadan. And shortly before the festival, I was declared the best player in the IFA League. That's amongst the top clubs in the West at that time. It was unbelievable. They gave me an award, and there I was just wondering what was going on. Because I thought I was just an ordinary football player. Scrawny teenager. Exactly. Slow striker. But then my name was in the newspapers a few times, and that was awesome. And as a student, students in school, Segun and all that. And they invited me to play to represent the West at the first National Sports Festival. So I go to the festival, I do well, played just one game. December of 1973, they invited me to the national team of Nigeria. That was more than a dream.
Awesome.
Yeah. National team of Nigeria. To play in the national team was like being a god. Those who played there were not human. Indeed. We were hearing their names, demigods. Exactly. I never thought that I would ever get to that stage. But apparently, I was doing something right in the manner in which I was playing my football. So I found myself in the national team. And of course, that was a big transformation from an ordinary player to one invited to the national team. And then went back to the Polytechnic, and I was a huge star at the Polytechnic at this point.
Larger than life by now.
And I spent 2 years there as a superstar on the campus of the Polytechnic. And I was playing for the biggest club in the West. And I was in the national team and all of that. On the eve of my graduation, Nigeria was going to the Olympic Games in 1976. And they ferried me straight from the campus to Europe to join them, heading for the Olympic Games in 1976. From national team to Olympic Games. That transformation is like going from the Earth to Mars. Something that was totally undreamt of. It wasn't something I could even conceive. Olympics, I couldn't even dream it. But there I found myself at the Olympic Games. And at this time, I had become a superstar, not just in Nigeria, but in Africa. So that's where it all started. Somebody who had no idea, not an iota of that vision that would come through football. It was education. And here was education being almost truncated. Not down the line, which I should have pursued because I was more an art student, right, and not a science student. But because of this football thing, I had to stop my advancement in art. I went into science. I went to the Polytechnic. I did not go to West Michigan University. That's where I got admitted into with some of my classmates, Soji Benson, and a few of them. 5 of us were admitted, but I didn't go. And so, well, that's the background to my life anyway.
Rich, incredibly rich, sir. And there are a number of things in there that are coming together for me already. So you were thrust into the limelight.
Absolutely.
But then you went back to the Polytechnic and you finished.
Yeah.
It didn't get to your head.
No.
And I think that's a very important kernel of a theme that I would say has unfolded throughout your career. That discipline, that precision, so mathematical. And we will come back to the origin of the name mathematical in a bit. I want to talk a bit more about your beginnings. You talked about being bitten by the bug. Suddenly, in my household, we were all bitten by the bug. I had a cousin who lived with us who was a 3SC supporter of IICC shooting stars in those days. I beg your pardon. Upsuiting.
Yeah.
Upsuiting. I had a cousin who was an IICC supporter, brother, Bendel Insurance. I was stationery stores, my father, ACB. So yes, these guys like you were demigods. That's absolutely correct. But I would like to know a bit more about your time at IICC. That's the beginning. You spent your entire career there. You won the 1976 African Cup Winners' Cup there. That was a first for Nigeria on the continent. You retired from there in 1984. For the Green Eagles, capped 23 or 53 times. 46 times. You scored about 23 goals plus, I'm sure. But I want to go back to your time at ICC. What was it like playing in the main bowl of the National Stadium and also in Ibadan at Batai? Wow, that's what was the experience like playing with the greats.
That's a very deep question. And it's deep because imagine a young boy from Jos, totally northern-oriented person. That was all my exposure before then, being dumped in the heart of Yoruba land, even as I was a Yoruba. And I now got into a club, Shooting Stars. Eventually, I got into Shooting Stars. If I went to the market to shop, to buy anything, they would not let me pay for anything. If I wanted to board a taxi, I was that popular, you understand, it was free. Down the line, I got virtually everything free. Where I lived, what I did. Anyway, those are things for my memoirs. Because these are not things that you see optically out there. So my sojourn in Ibadan with Shooting Stars was a little about the football, but more about so many socio-cultural things, including economic things also, because it now formed the basis for some of the things I do now. The scope of my thinking, my understanding of the Yoruba culture, the Yoruba ways, which I got in Jos from my father, has more than anything else guided my life up till now. The key is education. Then is the conduct and the character. And then the Omoluabi ethos to identify with the values of the Yoruba. So all of those things I got through Shooting Stars. No need to go into the details, but it has informed a lot of my life up to now.
Of course. So sir, you've just described a number of things that, of course, one would not have thought about prior to coming into a conversation like this. The very essence of sports, really, and the things you were engaged in. So the football was just on the surface.
The least activity was the football. It's like the World Cup, for example. You want to host the World Cup. Everybody thinks of playing the game. But the World Cup is not about playing the game. 8 years is not about, the 1 month they use, they play on the field. It's about everything.
Yes, sir.
It's about road development. It's about immigration, security, hospitality, all kinds of things for 8 years. And then it comes to the 1 month when they play the game. Or it's like going to Amsterdam Arena, for example, and you see that's the football field for Ajax. They play football there once in 2 weeks, but the place never sleeps. So what happens around it? So when you think of football as a game, the way most people see it,
you miss the point.
Exactly. Behind it is health, is education, is finance, is law, is agriculture, is town planning, is this, is that. It just goes on and on. But you need a special eye to be able to discover what lies beyond sport, beyond the actual participation. There's so much there, which is what I'm exploring today.
So you're really talking about the socioeconomic development, the politics, the power that goes with it. And it brings me nicely onto the subject of soft power.
Wow.
Because that's a huge part of what you're really discussing. First, I'd like to ask you, do you feel that what you just summed up so easily here, and the essence of this understanding, do you think that understanding is prevalent amongst those who run football in this country today? And are we doing enough to make the most of the soft power opportunities that present? There are Nigerians who are doing wonderful things in this country and abroad. What's your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Tunde Kilani is my friend. He's a storyteller. He's a filmmaker. And it tells me that, look, I see the world through the lens of a camera. He looks at everything through the lens of a camera. We go out somewhere to a function, a social function, and suddenly he whips out his telephone and is taking some pictures from some positions that you see other photographers don't do, because he would have seen something that nobody else sees. And the same thing with Dayo Adedayo. So I have found out that with me too, it's not deliberate. But now I see the world through the lens of sport. I connect everything around me to what I have experienced in sport. I'm not a learned person in terms of I don't have any special training for anything. Even the engineering, at a very low level. So I'm not trained for anything. But the experiences that I have are vast in a lot of areas of life.
Yes.
And through the years of these experiences, I have garnered enough to make me want to share, to make people who are experts in that field want to hear my story, want to share those experiences, because they are truly unique.
Of course.
Looking at their issues through the lens of sport. You are talking of soft power. That's what it is. You see, people say World Cup. I don't see the World Cup. I don't look at the game. I look at how it brings my people together. The patriotic glue that it could be. I look at the opportunity, if you want to host it, how it will help to change society.
Of course.
I look at education and I say, if we do sports, we bring sport and education together, it could help reduce what is happening with the Boko Haram in the northeast of Nigeria.
Of course.
And so on and so forth. I went to Nairobi and I met a group that were redesigning the city of Mombasa. And when they heard that I am a sports person, sports ambassador of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, they invited me to their conversation. These are town planners. And I was wondering what I was doing there. But suddenly they opened my eyes to it. I said, look, we are redesigning Mombasa. And we want to have elements of sport and exercise and physical activity in our design. And we need an expert who has experience, not who trained, who has experience to come and share his experiences. And I sat down with them and we started the conversation. And today, if you go to Mombasa, you will find different elements, the parks, the running tracks, the cycle lanes, the this and that. Those are all contribution from the sports sector into the redesign of a city.
Yes.
So, soft power. I am the head of the sports diplomacy unit of the Nigeria Institute of International Affairs. And Professor Osagai was the one who ignited, that interest and opened my eyes to that possibility. He gave it a name, even though I didn't know what name it was. When I experienced it in 1976, going to the Olympics, and politics crept in, and we boycotted the Olympics. We were sent out of the Olympics and all of that. And so many lives were affected negatively. Some never went back to another Olympics. And one of us, don't let me mention his name, took to drugs and all of that. His life was destroyed and all of that because he lost an opportunity, not through his own handiwork, but because government said, don't do this. If we had done it, he could have been a gold or bronze medalist in the world. His life would have been perfect. But there we were boycotting it, and he lost an opportunity. The power of diplomacy.
Yeah.
But we boycotted it. And the consequence or the benefit of boycotting it, because our government was sensible in asking us to boycott. We lost as individuals.
Yeah.
But partly the release of Mandela from jail. Partly the end of apartheid in South Africa.
Sure.
And so on and so forth. Those are huge global benefits that came from ordinary us boycotting the Olympics. So you see, it's a demonstration of the power of sport. Sport is just a small activity, but that impacted the world for so long, that changed the history of South Africa, that brought apartheid, the worst form of racism, to an end in South Africa. So that was the power we found out in soft power. That was soft power, the best demonstration of it. Look at 1977. In this country, we brought together, we organized the biggest, up till now, in history, the biggest congregation of Black people and people of African descent in the world. We did it.
Pestac.
We did it. And the Black civilization came to Nigeria.
Congregated in...
And what we built, they are still there up till now.
Correct, sir.
Infrastructurally, what we built. But you see, what we lost, mentally, what we lost as a people, as a civilization, as a culture, was not to have sustained it. You see, that was a moment in history, unprecedented, the most powerful congregation of the Black race in history, where we could have sat, and we did sit, and discussed how the Black race would be emancipated, how we will promote who we really are, how we will promote our institutions that have survived centuries and all of that. If you go to Abeokuta, you will see institutions that the white man is chasing up till now. How we manage our religion, for example. And if you go down in the Southwest, we don't have problem with you're a Christian, you're a Muslim. We have solved that problem.
We have.
and so many other things that are institutionalized that Festac could have made us to spread around the world that we lost. Soft power, fashion, dance, music, the things that people do not even take seriously. Are we going to fight America and win them and defeat them? No. Are we going on a space race with Russia and the rest of them? No. We have missed those points. But what we have now, we are demonstrating through Burna Boy, through Wizkid, through Olamide, through those great guys. And the same thing in literature, the same thing in fashion, the same thing in our food, the same, those are soft power tools that wise people can use to confound those foolish ones that don't see the power, of course, in them. So you were talking of soft power diplomacy. That's what it is, really.
But are we mining it effectively in your view?
No, we are not, because it's hard to see. It's hard to see. We have been talking about it, but successive governments, take sports, successive governments, even one government in Nigeria said that sport is not our priority. They listed 40 priority areas, the government before the last. And the sport was not included. And the minister actually made a pronouncement that sport is not our priority. Sport that could have helped education. Sport that the United Nations declared as one of the Millennium Development Tools for their 2015 agenda to eradicate illiteracy in the world, to eradicate HIV/AIDS in the world, to remove employment for the youths, to do that. That's the United Nations. They set up a unit headed by Jubril Diallo of Senegal to use sport to achieve all of those global objectives. That's what our government at that time said was not a priority of government. Whereas here in Nigeria, that's where we should focus on, because it provides, it helps, it takes the youth away from all those other vices and so on.
Community cohesion.
And just so that it's not only talk, I have set up my own small institutions, which is a model. It's not profit making. I just set it up as a model for people to see the possibility of using sport to attract young people into education, of course. That's what I'm doing. You were walking out there as a Nigerian and you saw that and you heard that song, and it was Zil Onya, the late high life maestro. It was the first time he would come to the stadium to do anything, and he came with his trumpet and he was blowing it and people were singing it. And our head was just going like that, like balloons. And we just knew that, look, this one is do or die. There is nothing else. That feeling, incomparable.